A farmer's hand, a pitchfork, not a weapon, until now. More than 600 years ago, they marched on London. They broke into the Tower of London, the only time in its history that it has ever been breached. They stood face to face with their king, and they changed England forever. This is the Peasants' Revolt, and it belongs to you. England in the 14th century. If you were born poor, you stayed poor. That was the law. Serfdom. You couldn't leave your village, couldn't choose your work, couldn't marry without your lord's permission. You worked his land, paid his taxes, and if you complained, he was the judge too. Then the Black Death came. It killed a third of England. Entire villages, gone. Suddenly, there weren't enough workers. The survivors knew their labor was worth more. They demanded better. Parliament's answer, the Statute of Laborers. It froze wages by law. If you asked for more, you were a criminal. Then came the poll tax, 3 times in 4 years. Every person over 15, rich or poor, the same amount. For a lord, nothing. For a farmer, everything. May the 30th, 1381, Fobbing, Essex. A tax collector named John Bampton came to collect. They refused. Then they ran him out of town. Word spread. Village after village joined. They burned the tax records. They smashed the courts. In Maidstone, they broke open the prison and freed a man who'd been locked up for preaching dangerous ideas. His name was John Ball, a priest, and his dangerous idea was this. At Blackheath, in front of thousands, Ball asked one question that shook the foundations of feudal England. When Adam delved and Eve span, who was then the gentleman? If God made us equal, who gave lords the right to rule? That question was a weapon, and now 30,000 people were carrying it. June the 13th, an alderman loyal to the rebels opened the gates of London. They poured in. They went straight for the Savoy Palace, home of John of Gaunt, the most powerful and most hated man in England. They didn't loot it. That's what matters. They destroyed it. Every piece, every record, every symbol of his power. When one man tried to steal a silver cup, his own companions threw him and the cup into the flames. They said they were seekers of truth and justice, not thieves. June the 14th, the Tower of London. 900 years of fortress, the most feared building in England. The garrison didn't fight, the gates opened, and for the first and only time in history, its gates were breached. They searched every room, every chapel. They were looking for one man, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Simon Sudbury. They found him on his knees, praying. They dragged him to Tower Hill. It took 8 strokes of the sword to take his head. They put it on a spike, on London Bridge. June the 15th, 1381, Smithfield. The king on one side, small, vulnerable, a boy of only 14. 30,000 rebels on the other, a sea of people demanding to be heard. And one man rode forward alone, Wat Tyler, a roof tiler from Kent. He rode up to the most powerful boy in England and spoke to him as an equal. He took the king's hand, called him brother, demanded the end of serfdom, fair wages, and equal justice for every person in England. Then a royal servant called Tyler, the greatest thief and robber in all Kent. Tyler drew his dagger. The Lord Mayor, William Walworth, stabbed Tyler in the neck. A squire ran him through. Tyler rode 30 yards before he fell. They dragged him from a hospital, and they beheaded him right there in Smithfield. 30,000 people had just watched their leader killed. They had weapons, they had numbers. It was about to become a massacre. Then the 14-year-old boy rode forward, alone, into the crowd, Richard II, and he shouted 6 words that stopped a revolution. "You shall have no captain but me." They believed him, they lowered their weapons, and they followed him out of London. Richard broke every promise, every charter torn up, every concession revoked, his own words erased. He told them, "Villains ye are, and villains ye shall remain." 1,500 people were hunted down and killed in the weeks that followed. The leaders rounded up one by one. John Ball was captured in Coventry, tried at St. Albans. He refused to repent. He was hanged, drawn, and quartered. In front of the king, he dared to question. They lost. That's what the history books say. But no government ever imposed a poll tax on the English people again, not for 600 years. When they finally tried in 1990, the people of England rioted again, and it brought down a prime minister. Serfdom, the system they marched against, collapsed within a century. It was never formally abolished, it just died. Because after 1381, no lord in England could pretend that the people beneath him had no power. Not soldiers, not knights, not lords, farmers, craftsmen, villagers, people with pitchforks, and a question. They marched on London, broke into the Tower, stood before their king, and they asked, "Who gave you the right?" That question never went away. It's still ours. Did they teach you that in school? They taught us to be ashamed of our history. They never taught us to be proud of it. That's what we're here to fix. Every person who supports us helps us bring back the stories that got buried. Stories like this one. We'll look after our heritage. We'll make sure the world knows what ordinary British people built. Once the support is there, we build. proudofus.co.uk/support. Be part of us. Be proud of us.